Your show.
Okay, so Bill's not gonna be here, okay. Okay, I'd like to call to order the audit committee meeting of January 10th, 2012. I will take roll call. Gabi?
Here?
Widmer? Not here. Howe here. Massey? Not here. Lamb? Not here. Conlon?
Here.
And
Alternate Carlson.
Carlson here
Is alternate.
as alternate.
Or Bill, the mayor.
Okay, item 2, public comments. Seeing as there's there's no period here from the public, we'll pass on this one. There's no public comments. Regular agenda. Approval minutes of November 1st, 2001 audit committee meeting. Anybody have comments, revisions to this, or? I actually have something, if anybody.
I would just say that I, as a mayor, drafted a letter to County Secretary, and I got a reply from them, which I have a copy of if you want to see.
Okay, so that would be item number,
Well, it was on whatever this number is here. the request
okay,
for
like a
me-
motion.
Yeah. And so.
So on record, you want to say that you did draft a letter,
I did draft the letter.
And no
I did
response has
draft-
been
I
made.
did get
No, they
reply.
respond.
have they responded? Can we, that's not on today's agenda item to discuss that then?
No,
What
but
the
I-
response was. So maybe we can put that next time.
Yeah,
But-
that's.
I would like to have them make a calculation that shows the exact numbers. It starts with the 60 million and ends up with the 5 million that we get going through these steps.
Yeah.
Because I think to tell us about it is word pictures, but I'd like to see the financial, because I still, in my,
I agree with you. I think we're getting screwed. And-
well, I know, but I think you can't tell that unless you make the numbers.
Well, let me tell you, the first thing he did was he said, all you need to do, he referred me to 2 websites. That will explain everything to you. Well, I went to these websites. They were so complicated. By the time I finished reading, I didn't know anything. And I said, no. That's not what I want. A simple letter from you explaining what it is. Well, this is a simple letter. So we can go back.
I think we need a calculation.
I will go back, or whoever, but I would be an auditor to go take a look.
Yeah, well, and I will, I'll spend a reasonable amount of time once they calculate it. We'll miss it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
So I think we need to make a motion that we will discuss this at the next meeting
Yeah.
and perhaps,
Okay, that's fine. I'll make a motion.
okay.
Second.
We can have a second that?
Right, and I think we should, the finance director, I think she, with or without me, should go over there and sit down and say, all right, let's start with the $60 million, let's wind up with a 5.5, and you take us through it step by step, and show us where the statute says that's what we do. Because it says here, well, we can negotiate with somebody about something, and I'm just saying, hey, if we got a chance to increase it, then we should.
That would be great. I agree with you. So,
You get me a copy?
Deborah, this is your first chance to really put the hammer into assess it.
Okay, so we will we'll put this on next
Okay.
agenda item. And,
Meanwhile, I'll move that we approve the minutes.
well, wait. Before we do that,
Okay, you go ahead.
this is just a trivial thing, but it says that audit committee meetings January 10th, 2012. I'm not sure we should have that. It almost sounds like it's the committee meeting minutes for today's meeting. I know it down here, it says November 11th, but I think that's not normally put down there as a title in the minutes.
You're saying that item 6, the January 10th, shouldn't be in there?
Oh, the date of last time's meeting should probably be at the top.
Right.
Yes, I agree. Right, so it should be titled November 1.
Okay, so with that in mind, does anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, so item number 4, status draft purchasing policy. This would be Bill's item, unless you're taking it over, or?
Well, I'm here. Bill called both of us and asked if each of us, if we would replace him at the meeting, so I don't know which one we are, but anyway.
Okay, so
bottom
you're
line-
both going to be discussing the purchasing policy.
Well, bottom line is, for us purchasing policy, because this thing has been going on forever.
Mhm.
And I think it's up to John now to tell us when it will be approved and distributed.
jump in. Okay.
I'm Deborah Offer, I'm the new interim finance director.
So I'm Randy Lamb.
So the reason the purchasing policy is on there, because in the minutes from the last meeting, there was a request to include that, the two items that are on the agenda are from the minutes. I did not speak to the previous finance director to prepare for this meeting, but I did have a chance to talk with Bill, the current mayor, and he gave me a brief update of the process that the city has been going through regarding the purchasing policy. And we spoke, and he gave me a copy of his recent draft. I received a copy of the recent draft that the city attorney is working on, and I'll be completing my review and making some recommendations that I think will be appropriate for the city of Atherton, going over that with the city manager, and our goal is to have it before the council in February.
Okay, just for your information, historically, this purchasing policy has been going on for a long time. Bill was kind enough to take a look at it, make some revisions, draft it up. And I think the concern now of the audit committee is, where is this? Where does it stand so
When
that
are
we
we
can
going
start
to get it?
implementing?
When-
Yeah,
When are we going to have it
so
come
we
to
can
the
start
council?
implementing.
And basically what Deborah is saying is that the next council meeting is going to come for approval. Is that right?
Yeah, but we haven't seen, have there been any substantial changes to this policy than from when we've seen it last, which is a long time ago? I mean, are you
Shouldn't we
changing it?
review it
Well,
first?
Yeah.
let me answer that, rather than speculate on it. The work that was done on the revision to the purchasing policy, unfortunately, was based on a charter city. And we're not under a charter city under any shape or any form of the imagination. So the vast majority of the work that was done, and there was a lot of work that was done, is not applicable to a general law city. So the city attorney got involved, and what I should have done 3 months ago is thrown the whole thing out and just started over. That's what we should have done, but we tried to fix it because so much work had personally gone into it. At this point, then the city attorney and Bill have gone back and forth many, many times on this. We're making a mountain out of a molehill. What we need to do, and I have asked Deborah to do, is look and see whether or not there's portions of it that are fixable, can we adapt to them, or just start fresh. We could have a purchasing policy that meets all the standards, that's easy to work with, in a month, back to you. There's many of them out there we could borrow from other cities. Then I'd like to have an agreement with you all to say, let us work with it for 6 months and find out which parts work, which parts don't, and we'll come back to council and amend it at that point if it needs to be. So we've tried to fix something that probably isn't fixable for way too long.
Why just, because you were the one that kind of inherited part of this mess and to amend what Jim said, I mean, we've actually been working on it probably 3 forevers ago. I mean, that forever goes way beyond.
Lingered on for
Way
Before my time.
Many of these committees beyond. So separate of that, the last time that we heard of you were in the review process, and so we never really got any closure to what had happened. And so from Rose's standpoint, but from the standpoint of the committee, we were never told the differentiation. I mean, I think all of us know there is a differentiation between charter and general. So, I mean, that part we're okay with. Why did we go all the way down that path?
Yeah.
I mean, why did it, I mean,
We didn't
I guess
even know
that's-
this was
it's
an
irrelevant
issue.
now, but,
Let me tell you what I think. I'll add to what John said.
yeah.
This came up a long time ago.
Ah,
And Bill said,
years.
I've had a lot of, Bill, the mayor,
Yeah.
said, I've had a lot of experience in these kind of things. I want to volunteer to help write this policy. So
Right.
we agreed. Well, it turns out that Bill did spend a lot of time writing the policy, and it turned out, when it went to our attorney, he said, you can't prove this stuff in here.
You can't what?
You can't prove half of this stuff in here. It's based on the legal interpretations and everything else, and I think our attorney's pretty good, but you can't do it. Bill, I think, maybe fought that a little bit. And I think one of the things we have to realize now, at least in my mind, as a council, we're really not responsible for writing these policies. It's up to the city manager to write a policy. And then he brings it to the full council, who can then either approve it or not approve it. And he can bring it to the audit committee also, who can make suggestions in an advisory role or to the finance committee. And so I think maybe we've got a little bit out of sync in this thing. And we had a lot of well-meaning people like Bill, who was trying to be helpful, but in the end, I think maybe delayed it by a lot.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't think any of us.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Why didn't they tell us this was what was going on? I mean,
Well-
this was put on the agenda because we're all getting frustrated, with this policy. Where is it? Where does it stand? When is it going to be
Well, what
approved?
happened was
And
that
now we're hearing something else.
there was a lot of discussion between Bill and our city attorney, which I think they were not necessarily in agreement, and I think it, in view of the fact that the city attorney is only here 1 or 2 days a week, I don't think maybe we got that brought to the fore enough. And then John, of course, recently was a little bit under the weather. And anyway, I think at this stage, we just have to remember, it's not our job as council members to do it. And
City staff just said, stop, bug out.
that's right, a well-meaning council member, and I've been one of them in the past, I'll admit, who was trying to be really helpful because we thought we were really experienced knowledge, but can actually screw up the system more. It's up to our city manager and John, whoever replaces him, to do that. and to do
So
that.
it would be good in the future, if I can make the suggestion, if you're all right with it, is just to have you sit in on our meetings. I know they're probably a pain, but I'd rather work on stuff that's relevant, and not to sit through each one of these meetings for how many years, and then come back and find out that the same things are on the agenda. And then it generally would come back to you as, well, John's looking at this, or John's looking at that, or whoever you're.
Well,
Yeah,
That's the part I would only ask.
Yeah,
I just want to work on productive stuff.
We've
I
had
agree
this
with you.
purchasing
Yeah,
policy emailed to us, and I know that we've all spent countless hours editing it, thinking
Bill
that,
wasn't the only one.
we had this emailed to us, we edited it, we input it, we went back and forth, thinking that this was the appropriate.
Well, it was,
way to do
it
it.
was sort of a screw up.
No, I think
And it was
there's a
all-
lot of hands involved.
A lot of well-meaning people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so
this is done?
No, so let's get a timeline, what's going on? So you're saying that in a month, we will get back, we'll
Well-
get a copy of this, or?
Deborah is just now on the job, and I want her unbiased opinion. Can it be fixed with words that are not worth it? Can we just start? Because bear in mind, it's not that we don't have purchasing policy. We have a purchasing policy in place, and we have state law that governs us. So it's not like we're flying with no rudder whatsoever. Is that every purchase has been legally made, appropriately made, with full transparency and disclosure. So, yeah, it's annoying not to have a new purchasing policy, but it's not that we're without an existing policy either. And it isn't going to be too profoundly different than that one. So if Deborah says this is not really fixable, I could go to Bill Connors and probably get a purchasing policy done in a week. And it'll meet all muster, and we'll come back, we'll get it to you all, get your comments on it, and ultimately it goes to the policy-making decision, which is the council.
Let's make sure we get it to the council by next council meeting.
Can we take one more step? Let's go.
I was just gonna say, can we get just a report back to us at the next meeting of what's going on? You're saying that you don't know
Sure.
how long this is going to take. We'd like to just find out what's going on with this. at this
Well, I
point.
didn't say that I wasn't going to tell you what's going on. What I said is that I would like to give Deborah a little bit of breathing room to look at it, give an honest opinion of it, because if rewriting it is harder than going out and getting a half a dozen ones that have already been written
Right.
and taking the best of those and cut and paste, that's what we're going to do.
Should you go ahead and just do that?
I was gonna say the same thing. Why don't we just do that? Because honestly, we all spent so much time on this. If we'd all thought it was great
You
policy.
think you spent a lot of
I
time on it.
know.
We've spent
Well,
buckets full of
but
time.
my issue is we're volunteers. I mean,
I'm really-
unfortunately,
I'm
you
really
get what you
sorry.
pay for, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
How did this go on so
Exactly,
long?
yeah,
How did
exactly.
this-
So why don't we just assume
It
that?
also applies to staff, don't you? We want them to spend their time.
Totally productive time. They don't have,
Everybody will do something.
yeah, I totally agree.
I apologize, as mayor at the time, I should have cut it off.
Okay.
I would say this, it's the old joke, the road to ruin is paved with good intentions.
Okay, so you're taking full responsibility.
Okay.
No, the buck stops with me, and
Okay.
No, we don't care where it
we're
is.
gonna get this thing taken care of, get it back to you. It's not gonna be wildly different than the one we've got, but it will be up to date, it'll have all the latest statutes involved in it. And, you know, there's already been some suggestions about altering even further, and I think, I'm cutting it all off.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a standard purchasing policy, approved by council, and then I hope council asks us in 6 months, how's that working out for you?
Good, that's all we need to know, we just
Yeah.
need to know.
It's
where
the
we're
new
at.
way we're trying to do business here. Most of the other things that we've dealt with you on have either been accomplished or we're in pretty good shape.
Mhm.
This was too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right, it's good to know.
It's a lesson that we've learned, unfortunately.
And we're gonna move from here, and you're gonna be very happy with it, because next month, you're gonna get a report back on exactly where it is.
Good, I just thought this meeting would be taken up with Bill here, we would go line by line through this purchasing policy.
God help us.
Yeah, okay.
No,
I think there's something missing here. Fortunately, I didn't have to go through all these hours that you've done.
Yeah.
So I've been very blessed with that, but somehow Bill's got a problem. And I don't know what it is, but I think he's the key ingredient. And the fact he's not here, really makes it very unclear what's the problem. And he's got a problem, I don't know what it is. But I think you need to meet with him. When is he coming back?
He's not coming back till Tuesday before the council meeting, the 17th.
Well, then I would put it off a month. There's no rush here. But we need to get Bill's input.
But we're not gonna have it this council meeting anyway.
All right, well, that's fine. So,
I mean,
I think Bill is the key guy. He needs to sit down and say, hey, what is the problem? Why are you concerned about it? Something happened, I'm sure, that triggered him to be concerned. I don't know what it was, but I'm
It
sure.
was all, so to your point, it was, there were a lot of issues in that policy that go like this, and there wasn't really any general oversight.
But there must have been a trigger to start the whole thing that he's concerned
Well,
about.
the trigger
No, I
was
think
our
Jim-
previous city manager, unfortunately. I mean, I think we ought to separate two things. One is, do we have a purchasing policy in place right now? Absolutely.
Yes.
Do we have a written, agreed, approved purchasing policy? No. Prior to that, before we put the purchasing policy in place that's there now, we had a purchasing policy that was absolutely full of holes in action, had all kinds of big problems, and I was seriously concerned about it, and I think Bill was too. And John put a purchasing policy in place that has basically filled those holes.
Okay.
Well, I just think John and Bill need to sit down
I think that's
again
fine.
before you come back to us, because I don't think, we don't have the problems. He's got the problems.
That or just take it off our agenda. Let's just do stuff we can really
Well,
Well, no, at some point they can approve it, but
Yeah.
we need to get it
I mean,
ironed out
I
first.
can't remember,
We're just
did we make a
advisory.
motion that we would have just a report, status up report on this next meeting? Did I make a motion on
Yeah,
that?
let's make a motion that we have a status.
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
And then we don't have the meeting unless Bill is here.
And
John
Bill
is
will
here.
be
Wow.
here, I won't be here, but Bill will be here.
All right, but Bill's the key guy on this issue.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, approved. Just to go back to one more thing again. So we put on the agenda for next time, this draft letter that you had put. So are you going to be returning to it to give a status report as well?
Well, no, I think she should.
Okay, you need
Because
Deborah.
Deborah's gonna get it.
Okay.
I'm giving her a copy of
Okay, but you seem to be
I'm giving
very
her a copy of the
opinionated
letter.
and seem to have some.
I just wrote a simple letter, I've got a copy of that as well, to them saying, look.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know
Explain
who
to
the
us
place.
why we're getting screwed on.
Well, I don't know who we are, but I just think we need a calculation
Right.
that starts with 60 million at the top and 5.5 million at the bottom, and goes through every step of what the statute is for each step. And where he talks about negotiations with who?
Okay,
I'll
good.
read the letter I sent. It said in
We're not supposed to
2011,
do that.
Atherton paid at least 60 million
Jim.
property taxes. It was probably more, it
Jim.
is more, but I have used the 1% calculation. In return, Atherton received about 6.5 million.
We'll talk about this next time.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just saying, this is.
I'm sorry, Robert, I just couldn't remember whether, this meeting, this kind of is going around and around. I just couldn't remember whether we made the motion to discuss that next.
And Deborah, after you take it back, and I'll be glad to sit down with you at any time.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 5, discussion of irrevocable trust for other post-employee benefits, OPEB. Deborah.
So, in the minutes, it was suggested that it was to be on the next agenda. is what I've done so far is I've looked into where we are today. In the audit, it reflects that the city has started to look into Section 115 trust. I think you've talked about this before, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but
Rebecca,
it has.
just to interrupt you. At one point, the council actually approved this. And what is puzzling me is why, and it puzzled me at the last audit committee, and why it's going back. Somebody explained it to me, and I'm not quite sure I remember the explanation.
So that's a good point of information because I have not found the council action.
The council approved this. Do you remember, Jerry?
I've called PERS and they do not have any.
Well, the council
Action
approved, go
from
back
the
to
city.
the council meetings, I'll see if I can find it in my council meetings.
Uh-huh.
The council approved it, but at one meeting, it was a finance committee or the audit meeting, they said, yeah, we approved it, but we didn't do something right. And
I think we approved setting aside, but I don't recall an approval of actually setting up
That is probably what you've done. So just to remind everybody quickly, this is the retiree medical liability that the city has. It's one of the benefits to retirees. There's GASB 45 that requires you to report it in the financial statements. The grand jury also did a little assessment of the different cities in San Mateo County and where they are in their funding. There's no requirement that you pre-fund this. There's no requirement that you put all the money that's required to set aside. But in your audit, it's going to show that you're kind of in the red if you choose not to partially or fully fund it.
One of the things though that's missing, I think, is a recalculation of what that liability is, given the fact that we've got fewer employees and more contract people.
Yes,
I
the
think
city did it 2 years ago, and there's been quite a few changes in the organization, and so there was a request for proposal sent out to get a new actuarial study. Those are on my desk. There were 2 people that responded. One was the firm that did it the first time, and another firm. We could probably choose from those 2, but there's other firms out there I can contact and see if anybody else
Do you have
wants to
any
do a bid.
experience with the firm that did it the last time?
I personally don't have experience
Are
with
they
them.
actuaries? What are they?
They're actuaries, and there's actually a list of a bunch of these actuarial firms that are all kind of approved by PERS or suggested, they understand the rules that are in place with the
Maybe some are better
GASB.
than others.
I'm sure there are some that are a little bit better than others. There's also an option to do an alternative assessment. If you're an agency less than 100 employees, you can do some other kind of modified actuarial report. It's only around, $4,000 to $5,000 to do it. With the big change in staffing, it might be a good idea to do a full report this time, and then maybe we do the modified. It's required every 2 years. Maybe we do the modified after that. I'm looking into what I would
Somebody at one
recommend.
point, in one of these meetings, and I've forgotten what, looked at those actuarial firms and said that they were going to talk to the surrounding cities, outside with somebody to see what their opinion was. Now, I don't ever remember getting that report.
No, I have a whole list of a bunch of different ones, and I can find out from other cities who they've liked. I've used a couple of different ones that are
You
very
can call,
popular.
for instance, Susan Jordan of Woodside, who's
Yeah,
Yeah,
John
popular.
Bartel is a person that does it for a lot of agencies. He does a lot of training. There's a couple of other firms that are also very effective.
And the presumption is that we would fund it over a period of years.
Well, so first you get the number of what is the liability. And so that's what the actuarial report will give you. And then, like right now, we are fully funded for the actuarial study that was done last time. So it's about $1.2 million. And we have that set aside in a city internal service fund. But we don't have that sent to another outside trustee, right?
Irrevocable trust,
An
so it is sitting there, it just isn't in
It's
the
not
trust.
in the right place.
Correct. So if somebody were to ask, are we attempting to fully fund our OPEB obligation, the answer is yes. And with the revised actuarial study, it's likely that our OPEB obligation will go down a little bit, even though all of the other factors go up because the medical cost of living goes up and things like that. With the number of employees, it will likely go down a little bit. So we will, it will probably look like when we get this done that we are fully funded in our city investment portfolio. And so then the question is, do you want to send this money over to an irrevocable trust? And through different analysis that different cities have made, yes, it makes sense to do that. It is an obligation of the city. If you send it to an irrevocable trust, then it can earn a higher interest rate. It's set aside, it's off the city's books, and it's there to pay these benefits.
And it feels
So
like
do we
the
make a
council-
payment every year now?
We will, I think we have a practice right now of setting aside the annual required contribution and just putting it in the
And
special
there is an
fund.
annual one determined?
The actuarial report does come up with an annual required.
To keep us fully funded?
Kind of like
No one really
in PERS retirement, you ever hear the term normal cost? They say the normal cost is what you really should put aside every year to.
Plus an amortization of the unfunded,
In PERS, yeah.
if we had any. And you're saying we're fully funded?
So according to the June 30th audit report, we do have enough set aside to cover the annual required contribution. It's not the fully funding of the $7 million.
Say again?
You're dead.
While she's looking to, Carrie, you said the council had already, both of you said
I
that visited
think-
this, and what
I
was the
think so, and the
resolution?
feeling of the council at that time, from what I remember, Jerry may disagree with me, was that we should put these in the irrevocable trust.
I don't recall a vote on that. I think there was discussions.
Was it, well, maybe it was just, but the feeling in my heart, certainly my belief, to put it in irrevocable trust so it can't be touched
So as
by
part of this,
future councils or anything else.
so as part of this meeting to recommend to council that it be put on the agenda again
I don't really know.
and, recommend it, put some.
I think you need to get the actuarial study.
And take a look at it, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and those-
Okay.
Yeah, the first thing we want to do is get the actuarial study completed, and then there are, besides PERS, the PERS trust that is set up, there is one that is set up by another agency called PARS, and then Union Bank also provides a similar type trust. And so we'll look at those three options and propose to the council which one we feel is the most advantageous for the city. And then we would take to council the agreement or resolution to enter into
What's
the
that
trust,
policy?
the PERS trust. Most agencies have gone with the PERS
And I
trust.
think from Greg's point, there's two separate issues here. One is you could pay the whole thing off right now, which I don't think we would necessarily agree with. Or you can put your annual contributions in an irrevocable trust. So there's sort of two issues here. It's not one issue.
What was the 7 or 8 million?
Well,
That was- yeah, that
the
was-
accrued liability shows as 7.7 million as of June of
That's debatable. I don't
2010.
think we ever.
But the annual, but the net obligation
But the
of what
amount
they're
of money per
suggesting
year
to
is
fund
what I
is the
think we're talking about.
1.2 million that we've required.
Irrevocable.
But I do believe that number is overstated based
Where
on the
is-
change. If you go down towards the bottom, there's just the liability. And I'm sorry, I don't have the report in front of me, so I can't break that down for you.
You realize he's an old auditor.
He was doing great until he asked us where it was on the pay stub.
So I have not personally looked at the actuarial study that develops that, but I do feel that it's a little bit, there will be revisions to it. As is expected, that's why they want you to do it every couple of years, because they expect that there will be changes.
So on the 7.7 versus the 1.2, where is that 6.5? Is it a real number? Is it meaning the difference between the 7.7 minus the 1.2 equals a $6.5 million or something, right? What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean that the town at some point is liable for that, or is that just?
No, we're liable for it. We're
So-
liable
so-
for the whole 7 million.
Maybe.
No, we are.
And so in the past, were we not putting money aside, or what happened? Or do we not have it,
In the
or?
past, you could put the money aside into a local fund, which is what we had done. But
Uh-huh.
that local fund, for some future
So
council,
we're just recognizing the current year's costs.
Well, let me just-
but the council could say, well,
These are
we
future
need this
costs.
money, so instead of putting it in there, we'll put it somewhere else, and that's what we want
But
to
yeah,
do.
the 7 million will be affected by the actuarial
Yeah,
calculations.
so whatever the number is,
And
we
this,
owe it.
But when
no,
though?
not necessarily. The larger liability number is based on actuarial assumptions, how long people are going to live.
We might not owe
Yeah, they're-
7 million, but we owe whatever the number is.
So
Hey
the,
guys, the annual contribution is $878,000, and we're only paying $228,000. So where do we get this belief that we're fully funded?
we are paying our net obligation, our annual
So,
required
yeah.
obligation. So remember, when you're doing an actuarial study, are you familiar with the way PERS retirement works at all? Okay, so it's easier when I talk to other city people. So when an actuary does their study, they say, how long are you gonna live, and how much is it gonna cost for us to pay your medical premiums when you're, 90 years old? And so they're projecting out what is the city's net obligation, because when somebody retires, the city could owe that much money. So
That's
that's the
discounted.
larger money.
That's kind of discounted.
It is, there's, all the different assumptions are included in there: age, retirement age,
And a discount rate.
the discount rate of what the investment rate's going to be, what the, cost of the premiums of the benefit's gonna
If
be.
they quit us and went to another town, would we still owe that, any money to that employee?
I believe the benefit right now is if you retire from the city. So you have to
Or if you transfer.
retire. If you
If you
transfer,
don't transfer from, if you don't retire here, you don't get the benefit.
you don't get the
No,
benefit.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you transfer someplace else,
It doesn't go with
They
it.
the liability goes with it.
That's right.
Yes, the city no longer has a liability.
Yeah,
And if
But-
somebody comes
That's
here
what I'm
to
saying.
work, if somebody comes here to work for one
we
day,
better be careful.
we better be careful, because then we owe all that stuff.
There's, yeah, and I haven't looked into what the vesting requirements are, but,
No, you're right.
so that's the larger number that the actuary comes up with, of what is the city's obligation with all these different variables, and they're the ones that, decide what the different variables are with the help of the
How many
city.
employees do we have?
Not including sworn?
Yeah, all employees are town employees.
Are you talking about contract
Maybe,
too?
70?
no. I think over at PD, there's maybe 28. And three, I'm thinking maybe 28.
Yeah, that's
It's about half of where we
Of
were.
course, most of them in the police.
Oh, the vast majority are, I think there's like
21 or something.
3.
Why don't we let her finish her sentence?
So that's the larger liability number, of what is the full liability.
Discount.
And then,
It is discount.
it is, but it has all those variables included.
And that's the 7,000,007.
Yes.
All right.
And then there's a calculation of what should the city put aside as
Annual.
of today.
And
Well, there's an annual required contribution, and then there's the, the obligation that it thinks we should have to date. So what should you have today in order to meet this long-term liability? So that's the 1.2, is saying what we should have today, and we do have that, in order to meet a longer-term obligation.
But what do you mean, like, what is the longer term? What's the definition? What time frame?
Definite.
The life of the,
Expected life.
the expected life of the
If
benefits.
they stay here and kept on working. this
If
is
they
what we-
retired from here,
Yeah.
how long are they gonna live after retirement date that the city's gonna pay those benefits, or for dependents as well, depending on which, benefit
And
group
if
they
we had employees.
So do we just
it's
get a bill every year or every month or whatever it is? Is it just the 28 you have plus everybody who's retired already? Do we just get a bill based on their families or whatever is going on? Is that what we get every year?
This type of benefit is, to retirees only, that meet the
Yeah.
criteria
Oh,
that was in
retirees,
place
okay.
when they retired.
Great.
And so, I haven't looked into the exact requirements for every bargaining group. The audit report's a little bit vague, but usually there is some kind of vesting where you have to stay with the agency for so long before you're eligible for the benefit. And then, in some cases, there's a cap on it, where you say we're only gonna pay $1,000 towards the premium a month. In some cases, it's, we will pay the premium every month for your medical benefits,
But deductibles,
Until the end of
all
your
that
life.
are out of it, it's just,
and so,
So are you asking, like, who are we paying every month? And do we pay every month?
yeah, meaning, are we looking at our budget number and saying, okay, we have 27 retirees out there right now in this position that we pay for, or that we have 127?
the calculation does count how many you currently have, how many you project to have.
But that doesn't totally cover.
No, I know. That's
Because
why
if we made a change,
right?
to the contract agreement that we have with these employees as far as what they pay for medical benefits and for retirement, which is quite likely, I would hope, that would also change the number.
Yeah, yeah, but not on the existing though, Jim.
No,
I'm saying on the
existing.
existing, if we can at least figure out what our burn rate is now.
For people who have already retired,
And we know
we're stuck.
we're paying
We do have, I don't
No,
have the
we know
information
what
right
we're
now,
paying
but we
now.
know what we're paying right now, because on a regular basis, we pay the.
So of the
retirees.
amount what the comment that just came out was, well, the report says 800,000, but we're paying 200. Does the 200 keep us level, so to speak, so that we're not cutting into that million too, or what? I get it doesn't matter maybe, but I just was curious.
No, I didn't quite understand that number either.
Yeah.
Is the way I understand we do it here, and the way most agencies do it, is that we are paying the current premiums, we call it the pay-as-you-go funding model.
Mm.
So for all the people that are retired right now, we are paying their premiums.
Mm.
So we're meeting our obligation by
That's the
paying that.
200,000.
But that's just pay-as-you-go, that's not fully funding it, right? In reality, if you're an employee, I should be setting aside $2 every week towards your long-term benefit. And that's what's called meeting your annual obligation. And so in the audit report, it might be confusing because it might say we've paid this much in cash, but there's also a little bit more that you have to pay to meet your full annual obligation.
So
Yeah,
maybe
I see.
It might-
Well, no, but what you're saying is you're paying only the premiums on the current employees who are retired.
That is correct.
And you're not paying any premium that's anticipated in the future. You're on a pay-as-you-go basis.
The cash leaving the city right now is just the premiums, as you stated, but we have set aside the remainder
We've agreed.
of this dollar every week that I should be setting aside for when he does retire.
Looks like you've only done it for 2 years
That's
because
right,
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
We'll do that for 2 years.
because that's when the FASB 45 or whatever kicked in,
so it was just 2 years ago that you started
That's
funding
right.
the difference.
That's right.
Yes.
for all cities, not just for Atherton.
But then the catch-up on these prior to 2 years ago is 7,700,000.
The total outstanding, I believe, of what the city's obligation could be, all of those actuarial factors came out, could be that.
Well, then the 1,200,000, if we put it in a separate fund,